Food is just so good.
Family let you know that he did watch the game on Sunday. He was excited and feels very supported by the outcome across the league, especially.
Yeah, all I see is the screen. Oh yeah, there's a little delay. All right, cool. Shall we? All right. The stream. Yeah. All right, ready? R.I.P.
Test, test. How does this sound? I just want to see how it sounds on Audacity.
Ready whenever.
Want to make sure I'm loud enough.
Three, two, one. Yeah. Well, and regular season recap first, right? Sure, we can do that. Just pull up. Why don't you pull up the ESPN standings on your phone, and we'll go by that order. East, North, AFC. Exactly. Yeah. You know what I'm going to say about that. Cheeks droid. Good one. All right. Ready? It was pretty bad. Ready? All right. Three, two, one. Welcome back to episode 15 of the Unintentional Grounding podcast. We took a little bit of a hiatus. We were recording a little bit before the NFL season started. Turns out the NFL season has come and passed. Ended yesterday, week 18. And now we're back. And we're going to talk about the season, our thoughts on it, things that surprised us, disappointments, good surprises as well. Josh, what is going on, my man? How are you? And also, how did you feel about this NFL season? Just like we drew it up. Boo. Yeah, I mean, every year the NFL throws, we have all of our thoughts coming into the season, and then there's a couple teams that, throw us off that. We'll talk about the Broncos later, but like just crazy surprises where you think a team's going to be good and they're bad, you think a team's going to be bad and they're good. NFL is really hard to predict year over year unless you're talking about a team like, I guess, the Chiefs that have like a franchise quarterback and a good coach, and you know that those two things are always going to be uh, dependable. But most teams aren't like that, so you kind of never know what's going to happen. I guess we can do a quick recap by division. So why don't we start in the AFC East? Our division, my New York Jets, your New England Patriots. Unfortunately, our teams are the two teams from the AFC East that did not make the playoffs this year. I'd say both of our teams had high hopes at various points throughout the season, and yeah, now their season is over. I think he's probably not going to be back for the first round matchup. We'll talk about that in a bit, but based on the betting line, at least he's not. Yeah, no, I mean that makes sense, and I think the Jets are a pretty complete team, minus the most important position in football, the quarterback position. I don't want to talk too much about the Jets because I could go on and on, but the explain like I'm five of the New York Jets season was great team, no quarterback, and when you don't have a quarterback, it doesn't matter how good the rest of your team is. So hopefully we'll find a quarterback next year, whether that's Lamar, whether that's even Derek Carr would be better, although I don't particularly love Derek Carr either. But Zach Wilson ain't it. We know that much. Um, Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Patriots this whole year really weren't it, honestly. Like, not just about Mac, but like the Patriots had a lot of penalties this year, which is like very uncharacteristic. It seems like coaching, which is almost always something that is a strength of theirs relative to their opponent each week. Often this year was actually a weakness. It seems like their coaching was not very good, especially on the offensive side. We don't need to get into the whole thing other than Matt Patricia is not an offensive coordinator. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I guess in terms of like their records, if we were predicting their records in the beginning of the season, I don't know. Like, I'm not that surprised that the Jets finished 7-10 and that the Patriots finished 8-9. Like, those aren't shocking outcomes to me. I think the Jets betting line was like maybe 5.5 or 6.5 or something, and the Patriots were probably somewhere in the 8 to 9, 9.5 range as well. So, not super shocking in terms of the actual paper results. But if you have the context of having watched these teams during the season, you're definitely surprised at how good the Jets defense was. And you're surprised at how bad the Pats offense was, I would say, as well as the Jets offense. Um, but yeah, these teams are bunch of losers anyway. So let's talk about the winners in the AFC East. The Dolphins have clearly unlocked something under Mike McDaniel. Like Tua under Mike McDaniel is clearly a competent quarterback. I'm not a Tua truther. I don't think he is in the top tier of quarterbacks. He threw so many bad passes this year that almost got intercepted but were dropped. So I think his stats look a lot better than at least that one stat category of interceptions is a lot lower than maybe it should be. He also had a lot of great throws. He's very accurate. Tyreek is obviously, a beast. And a lot of people were like, Tyreek's not going to be that good now that he's not on the Chiefs. And I was one of those people for the record. I'm totally willing to admit I'm wrong there. And I was. And then, but the problem with the Dolphins, dude, is like I honestly see them as a three-man team in the sense that like Tua, if he's healthy, and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, like that's their team on offense. Like, yes, they can run the ball and they're capable of running the ball. Yeah, no. Like they have guys, they have decent guys, but like that is really like the core stars of their team. And then like on defense, their defense is competent, but I don't think it's anything that special. And well, I guess we'll talk about it later in the pod. But yeah, I don't. I'm. I think the Dolphins are one of those teams that like might be good in the regular season every year, and I'm not sure about the playoffs. But anyways, we'll see about that. Definitely pleasantly surprised at how good Tua and Tyreek was. Um, and then the Bills. No, they beat the Chiefs in the regular season. Yes, but I'm pretty sure that if the AFC conference final is Bills Chiefs, that they are going to play that game on a neutral field because the Bills got fucked over. So um they gave up a lot of points during the season. Really? Maybe anecdotally it just feels like yeah, I could see that happening, although I honestly I think that this Bills team is the worst of the last 3 years, like, for the purposes of the playoffs. Like, first off, they don't have Micah Hyde, massive loss in the secondary. Jordan Poyer has also been dealing with injuries all season. Um, Losing Damar Hamlin obviously doesn't help, but like you said, from a motivational standpoint, rallying sort of together off of that crazy incident might be sort of good for the mental side of the game now that they know he's safe and okay. Um, but yeah, I don't know. This Bills team is like, Josh Allen is as good as ever, but I think the offensive line is a little bit worse. And yeah, I don't know. I just have questions. Like, I just don't see the Bills. Well, like the Bills are capable of beating any team in the league. Let's be clear about that. But I don't see them as the same type of juggernaut this year as I did in past playoff years. And I don't really think there is a juggernaut in the AFC. You could say the Chiefs are maybe a juggernaut. I don't think they are. I think every team has some weaknesses this year. Um, but yeah, Bills go 13-3. And one of their losses was a fluke loss to the Vikings, we'll get to in a bit, who are absolute frauds. So yeah, good job by the Bills, I guess. They kind of did what was expected of them, and 7-1 at home, 6-2 on the road, 9-2 in the conference, 4-2 in the division. So I mean, I think the AFC is just hard in general. Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I am too, and I think this year, now that we've seen a fuller sample of their defense being good, heading into the playoffs, I'm a lot more sort of respectful, I should say, of the Bengals. Last year I was trying to fade them all the time, and that didn't work until the Super Bowl, and it almost didn't work in the Super Bowl either. So I definitely see them as one of the better teams, and I think Joe Burrow is him, like you said, and like he's got that Brady vibe of like he's not the most athletic, he's not the fastest, he doesn't have the biggest arm necessarily, but he's like the guy you want in the playoffs in the clutch moments. So yeah, I mean, impressive. I didn't think they were going to win the division. I thought the Ravens would. And I'm not right. So I'm not necessarily sure my take there was bad, but because the Ravens still had 10 wins somehow. But yeah, good for the Bengals. Dude, the Ravens are another team that I'm just like, I kind of think they're frauds for the playoffs, though. I don't know. Like, I just don't see them beating the Bengals in the first round. We'll talk about that. But yeah, I mean, I just don't think that the Ravens style on offense is a consistently replicable one for success in this NFL. You really need to have more than just Mark Andrews. And yes, they had Rashad Bateman, who appears to be pretty good, but season-ending injury. They need to add another playmaker of some sort, and they also need to re-sign Lamar at the end of if they can. I guess they could franchise tag him, but there's just some weird. There's some weird. I don't know if you've been following the Lamar injury thing, but there's like some weird stuff there where yeah, yeah, I do. I think he was avoiding that because he didn't wanna make the injury worse, and I think for the playoffs, maybe it's a little bit different, but I don't know, I just he didn't they couldn't come to an agreement on a contract extension before the season started, and so I'm just wondering, like, well, I'm wondering as a Jets fan too, like, is there a chance that Lamar is gonna leave this team? But we'll see what happens. If he leaves, the team is nothing. Yeah, and they were up big on the Bills before the Bills had their comeback too. Yeah, so, like, I don't know, 10-7, given no Lamar, probably pretty good. Andrews was also hurt a lot this year. Um, so yeah, they make the playoffs, good for them. Steelers somehow Mike Tomlin resurrects another winning season with this roster. Very impressive. I was high on the Steelers. I put, like, a dollar on them to win the Super Bowl at, like, 90-1 at the beginning of the year, and, like, I personally think that that wasn't that bad of a bet. I mean, it wasn't a great bet. Yeah, and, like, I didn't know that. But, like, yeah, that team is gonna if they can if they can fix the offensive line needs to be fixed. Pickens is gonna be a star if he's, people were saying that he has off the field and attitude issues, you know, in the lead up to the draft last year, and maybe that's why he fell because he certainly has, like, physical attributes and talent. And we haven't seen any off-field stuff really this year, so I think that might have just been kinda BS, and it seems like he's gonna be a real dude for them, so I'm actually pretty high on the Steelers going forward, but phenomenal job by Mike Tomlin to get them to 9-8, having to go toggle between, Trubisky and Pickett throughout the year. One gets a concussion, the other comes in, he gets a concussion, the other comes in. Pickett does have, like, yeah, I mean, yeah, and and I think we didn't expect that really of them. So I think that their season was overall a success. And then the Browns go 7-10. Jacoby Brissett was the starter until week 13, I believe, when Deshaun Watson came back from his suspension. Jacoby Brissett was, like, actually pretty good, and Deshaun Watson was awful. So I have no fucking idea what's going on there. I think that team, I think, is kind of going back to being trash in the next few years because I mean, maybe Watson ends up sort of coming back to form eventually, but, like, if what we saw the last, what is it, 5, 6 weeks where he played was a sample, like, he's not good, and they're and didn't they send home someone from practice the other day because he said he, like, wasn't coming back? Was that Jadeveon Clowney? I don't know, like, this just, like, weird, dude. Yeah, I just don't know about that. I just don't know that that's true. Like, he looked awful, dude. He looked awful this in what he played this season, and, like, I'm not saying he definitely can come back, but for me, now we're in the stage of you need to show me before I'm gonna believe it. Yep, fair enough. Yes, they won their last 5 to close the season, yeah. Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I actually yeah, yeah. I have a take for the first round with the Jaguars that we'll get to when we get there, but, I was definitely impressed by this team, and I think, yeah, largely it was coaching improvements. You go from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson. Clearly, based on what we saw last year, that's a huge improvement. And like they have talent offensively. Like Christian Kirk, they signed in the offseason. He was very good. Um, Yet Doug Peterson resurrected the corpse of Evan Ingram and turned him into an actually good tight end again, which is hilarious because he just never could do that outside of his rookie season on the Giants. Shout out to Jake Storms. I would guess so. Yeah, he probably would have been good. It just seems like a lot is in flux with the Colts with their coaching situation. I don't think Jeff Saturday is going to be the coach. Would be my guess after he blew. Well, he blew the lead. He lost. He lost the game in Week 18 to the Texans. But also he blew that game where he was up like 33-0 against the Vikings or whatever, and they ended up losing that game somehow. In the history of football, yeah. So yeah, the Colts not good. I mean, I think I was right, spot on about the Colts offensive line being questionable going in when I said that going into the year, and that ended up being the case. Obviously, it doesn't. Well, I mean, Quentin Nelson might have gotten hurt. I think Jonathan Taylor was injury prone this year. Defensively, they had some good games, but they lost some guys. So yeah, I just don't really know or care about the Colts in full disclosure. The Titans, like, they were 7-3 in week 10 or after week 10, and then they lost their last 7. And a lot of that has to do with Tannehill's injury. But even without the injury, I think I was generally right about this team when I was lower on them than higher. Like, even if he had stayed healthy, I think they are one of those, they're a scrappy team. They always show up to play, but like this year, I just don't think they really had enough talent. Like Robert Woods clearly isn't the same guy he used to be. Um, Traylon Burks is definitely showing he might be something in the league, but it took a while in the regular season to get there. Derrick Henry, you just talked about, he turned in another good season, but he also missed a game or two to injury. And yeah, it's like how much does he really have left? So I don't know, man. Like the Titans don't have a real quarterback. I mean, Tannehill is a real quarterback, but like how much longer is he going to be on the team? We know Malik Willis is. I don't think he's just going to last very long in this league, man. Yeah. They rescued victory from the jaws of defeat in that game, but in reality, they rescued defeat from the jaws of victory because they didn't get the first overall pick. I think they I think they did well against the spread. Like, if you took the Texans to cover every week, I'm pretty sure you would have been up money at the end of the season. I could be wrong about that, but I remember them being good against the spread just, like, every time. Every time I went to look. Their offense for, like, the first 3 quarters of the season was, like, actually one of the most incompetent things I've ever seen. Like, I dude, they just weren't good. I'm sorry, they just weren't good. And Russ also had some injuries in the middle of the season, I think. But I don't know, man. The only Yeah, I don't really see a good future for this team. Although I do think Jerry Judy is showing he can be a consistently good producer if he stays healthy. I think that's a big if, but when he's healthy, he seems to be putting up yards, especially in the last half of the season with Russ. Um, Raiders finished 6-11. I'm not surprised whatsoever, honestly. The Raiders just always find a way to fumble the bag, no matter how much talent they have. I was low on them because I thought their defense in the beginning of the season. I was low on them because I just didn't think their defense was very good. Uh, Mike Mc, what's his name? Josh McDaniels has a pretty large sample at this point from his 1 year on the Broncos and now this year as like not a very good head coach for an NFL team, and we'll see how long he stays there. But they're probably not going to have Derek Carr next year, so I don't know what that team's going to look like, man. Yeah, defensively, I thought that they were pretty solid in the last couple games of the season. And if they can roll that momentum into the playoffs, then, that'll maybe have something going for them, but they're never yeah, I don't know if he's gonna play, but what I will say is, like, this particular year, I never watched the Chargers and thought to myself, like, "That team is a team that, like, is just gonna, like, destroy team," like, they always play close games no matter what, and it's just hard for me to, like it's the same thing what I said before about, like, Deshaun Watson, like, I'm willing to believe that Justin Herbert can be a Super Bowl contending type quarterback, but the team needs to show me before I believe it, right? Like, just like the Bengals last year. And I just yeah, I don't know. The Chargers are a weird team because on the one hand, like, Herbert is you can make an argument that Herbert could be the best quarterback in the league on his best day, but it's not consistent and their defense is inconsistent and they're just their decision like the coaching is weird and I don't know, man. Yeah, anyways, yeah. A team a team that doesn't have any question marks is the Kansas City Chiefs, who won 14 games this season, lost 3. Um, Mahomes threw for 5,000 yards. It doesn't matter if Tyreek's not there, like yeah, I mean, their 3 losses so 2 of their losses were to the Bills and the Bengals, both close competitive games against real good playoff caliber teams. And then their other loss was, like, that weird fluky loss to the Colts. So, like, if you actually look at their season as a whole, like, I don't know, like, they were just pretty dominant, and, like, that's what Mahomes is, he's dominant, and I kind of think that, I'm currently holding a 10-1 ticket on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, which I don't remember when I placed that, it might have been sometime early in the season, and currently, I believe they're the favorites, at, like, plus 300 or 400 or something, and, yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to talk much about this. They kinda did what maybe they weren't expected to be this good this year, but we all know that it's within expectation for Andy Reid and for Patrick Mahomes to deliver a season like this. So, we'll see how it goes. They're not going to play in the wild card round because they have a bye. So we will see them in action in 2 weeks. But yeah, pretty high in the Chiefs as always. Let's go to the NFC East, which is, I mean, this is probably the highlight of the season. Yeah. I'm Yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. I think I mean Dable to me has to be coach of the year. I know that coach of the year is often based on record and like the Eagles, who we'll talk about in a sec, went 14-3. So like some people are saying Nick Sirianni should be coach of the year, but the problem with that to me is just like it has to be evaluated relative to what you have on your team. And the Giants have absolutely nobody like their receiving core is terrible. None of their receivers, other than maybe a healthy Wandale Robinson and a healthy Sterling Shepard, who those guys are like wide receiver 2.5s at best. Like nobody on their team is cracking certain depth charts, on other teams. And I just he turned that team into being just competent offensively. And like you said, Daniel Jones looked great. I think that I think that the Giants are like kind of like I think that they're kind of a light version of the Titans, if you will, which is to say this. They have a good running back. They have a quarterback who most thought was bad for a while, but turns out to be pretty solid. They don't have a ton of receiving weapons. Their defense isn't necessarily the most talented, but they do have some guys. But most importantly, the coaching is just so incredible. And I think what we've learned from this Giants season or what we're reminded of is just how important good coaching is in the NFL. So yeah, like we'll get to the Giants in the playoffs in a sec, but super happy for them. My stepdad's a big Giants fan, and his kids are as well. And I know we have some friends who are Giants fans. So congrats to you all. Uh, I'm a little salty that the Giants made the playoffs and the Jets didn't. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. And Daniel Jones, got to give credit to him. He was the butt of jokes for many years. So yeah, and then the Commanders finished 8-8, and it's just like, do we need to talk about the Commanders? They're a dumpster fire organization. Their quarterback situation is in flux because Carson Wentz sucks. Terry McLaurin is good. Jahan Dotson is going to be an electric player. That's about all I have to say, and I really don't care about this team. No, that's the Eagles won. Oh yeah. Yeah, my quick take on this is I do think the Eagles are really good. I do think they're going to be good in the playoffs. But yeah, there are questions of like just like we haven't seen Jalen Hurts in this moment yet. So like, how is he going to be? I mean, they did make the playoffs last year and they lost to the Bucks in the first round, but that team wasn't nearly the team it is now. So you know, I think having a bye should benefit them. Um, Not so much Jalen Hurts, who is recovering or has recovered from a shoulder injury. I'm sure maybe it'll help a little bit for him, but mostly just for the other guys on the team. So they'll be full go in the divisional round. But I don't know. I'm still pretty high on them. They're not my Super Bowl pick, but we'll get to that later. And then quickly on the Cowboys, like I was really impressed with CeeDee Lamb. He had a great year. On Dak Prescott's best day, he's an excellent quarterback. He just is so inconsistent, and he loves to throw pick sixes. So I don't think that that's going to be a very good trait to have in the playoffs. And like we all know that McCarthy is a shit coach, pretty much. So let's move on though, because we have a lot to get to, and not a not a ton of time per se. Vikings win the NFC North. They go 13-4. They had a shit ton of one score. Take a guess at something. You might already have looked. I want you to guess. What do you think their point differential was this year? They won 13 games, lost only 4, and had a point differential of -3. This is the most fraudulent team I've ever seen go 13-4. I can't get over it. No, he's the best. But I actually don't think their offense is spectacular because spectacular would imply some amount of consistency, and Kirk Cousins is not. I would not describe him as consistent. Yeah, I'm so out. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, no, 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 no. I acknowledge that their offense is capable of being a top 5 offense, I guess you could say, but I just don't think it's I don't know. I I think their offensive line is really bad with based on what happened with injuries this season, especially in the last few games, and so I think that that's going to be a major issue for them in the playoffs. We'll get to that in a sec, but let's move on. Um, let's just quickly go through the Bears and the Packers because I don't think there's a ton to say here. So real quick on the Bears, they go 3-14. Fields shows this year that he's pretty good, but they don't have a ton of talent on the roster outside of him. There's a lot of question marks about how they can change that going forward, but they lock up the first overall pick thanks to the Texans, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Uh, Packers finish 8-9. This team was pretty awful to start the season and kind of had a run at the end there, but were not able to make the playoffs. I don't have much to say about this, man. Like, I think the Packers are who I expected them to be without Devontae Adams, and their defense has always been questionable to me. And people were saying that it would be the strong suit of their team this year, and I guess it was because their offense was so bad early on, but like I don't think their defense is particularly good or special either. So no surprises on the Packers. Do you have any thoughts about those two teams? Yeah, pretty much. Lions no, Lions. I wanted to leave this one because I feel like this was one of the best sort of stories of the year. I mean, they didn't make the playoffs, but they put themselves in a position to at least, going 9-8, and, Amon-Ra St. Brown is him. We know that now. He's really good. You're a big Jared Goff guy. I was not a big Jared Goff guy, and yeah, I mean, the offense looks pretty fucking good, but I really I mean, I think a lot of it is a product of how good their offensive line is, but yeah, I mean, to their credit, they get their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, apparently is, like, gonna get a head coaching job soon, like, he's that good, so I think a lot of their success yeah, I mean, I don't know, we'll see what happens, but I just feel like once they have a fully up to speed Jameson Williams combined with Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, that is just such a sexy combination for, like, both just they're both, like, one super explosive and one isn't as explosive, but yeah, I mean, he's just so like, Amon-Ra, the way he runs routes, he always gets open, he's a gamer, and then Jameson Williams is just gonna, like, take the top off the defense, like, I'm really excited for their future. Yeah, you can't count them out, but, like, their coaching was fucking awful this year. Like, they were so not fun to watch, and Brady just has no protection, like you said. Yeah, I don't have anything to say about the other 3 teams other than that Chris Olave is gonna be a good receiver. I just don't care about the NFC South whatsoever, so I'm down to move on if you are. Alright. Eh, I think Kyler could be him with a better coaching situation. But I do think Kyler has certain attitude things that kind of make me feel like he might not be that number 1 guy. Everyone got hurt on the Rams this year. I don't even hold it against McVay. Their offensive their offensive rookies were also very good. They drafted 2 tackles. They really, credit to their front office who their front office was the butt of a lot of jokes after they made that terrible trade with the Jets for Jamal Adams. And, they made the Russ trade and they hit on a lot of their picks. So that looks really good. That's true. First place, 49ers, 13-4. This team is elite. I love everything about them. Jimmy Garoppolo goes down late in the season, broken foot, and they don't really miss a beat. They throw in, well, I guess I should say Trey Lance goes down in the second week of the season. Jimmy Garoppolo's back, and then Brock Purdy, who apparently has earned the nickname Big Cock Brock in the locker room, uh, is yeah, he's I mean, he was Mr. Irrelevant, dude. He was the last pick in the draft this year, and he's playing really well, and I just love everything about the 49ers. Last year, we both loved the 49ers in the playoffs, and I love them again this year, so so good. Yeah, and, like, another thing that people who follow the NFL may have not be thinking about the last couple weeks is that Debo Samuel is, I think, healthy now. So when fully healthy, they have and is Elijah Mitchell, their second running back, who's also very talented, is healthy. So they have an immense amount of weapons. And I mean, Brandon Ayuk had a phenomenal season. Like not maybe not fantasy wise, but like real life football, he's very good. So I really, really like this team. And we don't need to say anything about their defense. We know what the deal is there. So yeah, let me just interject there real quick because I forgot to mention this, and I have to mention this as a Jets fan. We had a phenomenal draft. We drafted Sauce Gardner, who appears to be a top 5 corner already. We drafted Garrett Wilson, who definitely seems to be a very good receiver, as long as we can get someone to throw him the ball. And then Brees Hall was having rookie of the year type season as a rookie running back for the Jets until he tore his ACL. So future's bright. That's all I want to say about that. Yeah, let's do it. So let's see here. Wild card weekend is this coming weekend. The first game, Saturday, 4:30 p.m. The Seahawks are at the 49ers. The 49ers are 10-point favorites. And, I do think double digits is a big number, but like I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, this Seahawks team, like you said, is they had a solid season, but they're not super special. And this 49ers team is absolutely elite on both sides of the ball. So, yeah, I don't think there is either. I mean, I think it's a big advantage for it's always an advantage for teams in the playoffs when they have a lot of sort of tape of them playing the other team. And that's the case here because, like you said, the Seahawks are in their division. So I think the 49ers are very familiar with what the Seahawks do, what they want to do, both offensively and defensively. And I think that that's going to benefit them a lot. And at the end of the day, I think talent wins out. And unless Brock Purdy has unless he has a terrible performance and they implode, I don't really see how they lose this game. And obviously the betting line suggests that they are very, very likely to win the game. Um, so yeah, not much to say here. I think we're both picking the 49ers. And to be honest, I'll be really disappointed if they do somehow lose because this is a team I want to see go far. I think that they're the cream of the crop this year. So let's go. I th- what week was that? I'm pretty sure Herbert was still dealing with the rib injury. No, no, no. He played, but he was not 100%. I'm super excited just because I love it when we get two young quarterbacks in the playoffs against each other. Um, I think, in my opinion, from a betting perspective, like you said, the Chargers are 1 point favorites. They opened actually as 2.5 point favorites, and so clearly money has come in on the Jaguars. I just don't see why this game isn't a pick 'em. Like Jaguars are at home, and yeah, you give the Chargers a slight advantage because they have Herbert, but like I don't know, the game should be a pick 'em to me. So I actually bet on the Jaguars. I did a fun bet on FanDuel. It was like Jaguars to win by 1 to 13 points. So as long as they win by that range, because I just can't see it being a blowout against Herbert, but I do feel like the Jags could win, and I think that was like plus 175. So I like that bet. But yeah, my I don't know. Like, do you have an official prediction for this game? Yeah, I mean, real quick, just a note on that game. Like, I think I lean Jaguars as well. I mean, obviously, I said I bet that, but in terms of an actual pick, I think I also lean the Jaguars just because the way they improved throughout the season on offense was, and I guess maybe defense too, but specifically offense was impressive to me. And like, if you look at the last couple games of the regular season that the Chargers played, like they didn't play that many good teams. They gave up 20. They beat the Cardinals by like 1 point. Like I don't know, like 5 6 weeks ago. They lost to the Raiders, who questionable team, close divisional game, whatever. They beat the Tua Dolphins, so like when Tua was playing, so that was kind of impressive. But then their wins are against the Titans, the Colts, the Rams, and then they lost to the Broncos last, week 18, which doesn't matter. So I just like don't really feel as though they are particularly at their peak of the season. And I could be proven wrong come Saturday, but you know, I mean, and if if Mike Williams isn't playing, like, that's a massive loss. It's a massive loss. So, we'll see about that. Alright, let's move on. What do you mean by put into the line? Because if Tua got announced as a starter, I think this line drops for sure. Yeah, yeah, totally. This game is weird just from a betting perspective. Like, I actually have no interest in betting this game. Like, I have no faith in the Dolphins, especially without Tua, but even with Tua, I just don't think it's that likely that they beat the Bills in Buffalo. Um, and yet I have no faith in the Bills to win by 10.5 points or whatever the spread is. So it's just like, from a betting perspective, stay away. Um, well, I guess it also depends about Teddy Bridgewater, right? Because like if Skylar Thompson is the quarterback, then yes. But if Teddy's back, then I think Teddy can run the offense decently, and I think the drop off from Teddy to Tua is not as big as it's sometimes made out to be. So I guess it really depends on those injuries, but yeah, not much to say here. I mean, expect the Bills to roll, and we'll be shocked if they lose. Yeah, yeah. I mean, not a ton of disagreements there. The line is the Vikings are favored by 3, which basically means that these team Vegas views these teams as neutral or as even on a neutral field. So I think the line's pretty much correct there. But if I did have to make a betting pick, I would absolutely be on the Giants +3, just because I think it's a close game. I think they're a scrappy team. They almost beat this Vikings team, and that game was also in Minnesota. And they could have easily won that game, and I think they're very live to win this game. And as I said before, I believe the Vikings are fraudulent. I'm fading the Vikings this year. Um, I would love to, normally I don't really root for the Giants in general, but like I definitely would love to see them win this game. And yeah, I think the Vikings are frauds. So I hope that that ends up being the case. But unfortunately it's very possible that the Vikings will win this game too. So I don't know. I'm actually gonna go with the Giants though as my official prediction, just to keep it spicy. Mm, yeah. Honestly, if Lamar plays, I hope that that line goes to 3 or 3.5 because I'll be all over the Bengals there. I think that we say all you said when we were talking about the Ravens in the season recap that, they don't allow a lot of points, which I guess is true on the numbers, but I gotta say, like, when they go up against wide receiver tandems that are elite, like T. Higgins, Jamar Chase this week, or they played the Dolphins, and so that was Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. They struggle to contain both. One of those two in the duo always seems to go off, and I just don't have a lot of faith in the Ravens cornerbacks and their secondary in general just to stop the Bengals offense. I mean, and we're not even mentioning like Tyler Boyd and Hayden Hurst who have become good. Yeah, I mean, Mixon in the running game and also in the passing game a bit. And they also have these two guys who just do random things at random times, Trent Taylor and Trenton Irwin. Do you know who I'm talking about? They're just like weird depth wide receivers who like come out of nowhere and like catch good like impressive touchdowns here and there. Anyways, I just think that the Bengals are going to have a lot of success in the passing game, and I just don't see I just don't see the Ravens succeeding that much offensively. Like I just don't see it. So I'm pretty inclined to take the Bengal. I mean, my prediction is definitely the Bengals with or without Lamar. And I think I'm going to try to find a Bengals -6 as well. But you know, on the one hand, like, it does worry me because I feel like everyone's gonna be on the Bengals, so it's like you generally don't wanna be on the public, on the train with the public, but we'll see. Yeah. Yeah, if Lamar plays, I would definitely take Ravens 6 or 6.5. Probably I probably wouldn't take it past there, though, even though the line might fall past there, just 'cause I just don't trust like, Lamar hasn't played in a while now, so, like, is he like, what if he's, like, not even, good at running the offense, but uh, last thing on the Bengals, like, they have to like, this game is really important because to me, at least, because, like, it's Joe Burrow, and, like, Joe Burrow is a guy like, he was asked in the post-game press conference of week 18, like, "Do you think you're in a good Super Bowl window right now?" And his response was, "My window is my whole career." Like, this guy is like Brady in that sense, and I just really I now that we know he's the real deal in the playoffs, like, I just wanna see him go far in every playoff situation. So, I'm really rooting for the Bengals just for the good of the NFL, and if you ever are someone that entertains, like, the conspiracy theories of, like, the NFL is gonna influence the refs to benefit one team versus another, it would be in this game where it's like it's much more valuable to the NFL if Joe Burrow advances in the playoffs than it is Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. Obviously, that might not don't put too much stock in that, but I do think that that's a bit of an angle. Yeah, I mean, I disagree a lot with the idea that this game should be a pick 'em. I think Dallas -3 is probably a good. I don't wanna say it's a correct line because I think there's value on it on Dallas, but but it's close to being a correct line. I'd say probably Dallas 3.5, minus 3.5 is the line I would make. Um, I just there is no reason why Dallas I don't wanna say there's no reason why they shouldn't win the game. Their defense is legitimately insanely good this year for a long stretch of time, and their secondary is I think is where the questions are, and, they didn't come they both of these teams lost week 18. Cowboys were probably trying a little bit harder than the Bucks, but the Bucks still played their starters, at least for a little bit, so I just this is a hard one, man. I think this is gonna be the most interesting game, but yeah, I mean, those 2 for sure. I just have to ride with the team that's overall been a playoff caliber team all season, which is the Dallas Cowboys. Like, the Buccaneers so much of why the Buccaneers are considered live is because of Tom Brady. But what people forget is that Tom Brady hasn't been that good this entire year. Like, yes, he's had good moments, but, like, Tom Brady is not the Tom Brady that he used to be, and especially not because of the offensive line. Like, the offensive line is awful. He has no time to throw. The Dallas defensive line versus the Bucks offensive line, I was talking about this in our Discord. That is possibly the biggest mismatch I can recall seeing in a long time. Maybe even since the Super Bowl where the Bucks defensive line destroyed the Chiefs injured offensive line. So I just for that reason I have to take the Cowboys. Like I fully admit like it's scary to pick against Tom Brady. And the Bucks do have talent, and they are playing a little bit better, and they are at home, but it's not like the coaching is very good, right? And, like, the Cowboys coaching is bad, but when we faded the Cowboys last year in the playoffs, it was against Kyle Shanahan, who's, like, one of the best him and his coaching staff is one of the best in the league. Like, the difference between bad coaching in this matchup on the Cowboys and bad coaching on the Bucks is not that big. So, I just think at the end of the day, I could totally see this game being close, but I have to ride with the Cowboys, and I think I'm gonna try to bet them -3, but I might even wait to get a -2.5 if I can. Will they do it? One of one of my biggest good bets of this NFL season was I don't remember what week it was, but it was when the Cowboys were visiting the Vikings, so they were away against the Vikings. The Cowboys were coming off a loss to the Packers in overtime, and the line was, like, even or very close or something, and I hammered the Cowboys. I think it was, like, a 4.4 unit bet or something. And this game does remind me of that a little bit in the sense that they just lost in week 18 to the Commanders and they were kind of trying. So I think that that might be influencing public perception a little bit. And they're traveling on the road and they're facing a team that is just not better than them. I mean, they could be better on an individual day, but over the course of the season, the Cowboys were clearly much better than the Bucks. And I just feel like this game could be an absolute shit show for the Bucks. Like you know, when Tom Brady threw 3 touchdown passes to Mike Evans 2 weeks ago against the Panthers, yeah, he had some time to throw, but, like, I don't see how he's gonna have any significant time to make those types of throws against this Cowboys defensive front, man. I don't see it, so but this is the type of game where the Cowboys could be up 27-17 with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden the Bucks are driving down the field, and it's like you're shitting your pants because you bet on the Cowboys, and you're thinking to yourself, "Why did I do that when Tom Brady's on the other side of the field?" So I'm just gonna say now that if I do make that bet, I'm fully aware that that situation might happen, but I think it's the smart thing to do anyway. I just don't see it this year. Yep. Yep. On January 31st of last year of 2022, this was, you know, gambling had just become legalized. Sports gambling had just become legalized in New York. I sprinkled the 49ers to win this year's Super Bowl at 14 to 1. And I did that because I thought that there was a chance Tom Brady would leave the Bucks after he sort of retired for like a couple months and join the 49ers. And obviously I was wrong about that. Yeah. And I was wrong about that, but I mean, now I'm holding that 49ers 14 to 1 ticket, and if you look at the odds, I mean, I'm sure they're a lot lower than that. So, anyways, I'm excited. I have a betting interest in them. Um, I'm just on board with you, man. They're the most complete team. I will say, like, their defense is capable of what's the right way to say it? I don't want to say capable isn't the right word. Their defense doesn't their defense has had some pretty bad moments, I would say. Like the Raiders game was a shit show for their defense. They gave up some weird weird flea flicker fluky long touchdown to AJ Green as on the first pretty much the first play of the game against the Cardinals last week. But overall, like, yeah, this team is them. And I think that so last year they had Elijah Mitchell and Debo, like Debo hybrid running back receiver. This year, they don't have to use Debo, or they can use Debo as a running back, but now they can rely on McCaffrey and Mitchell. And they also have like good running backs behind Mitchell. And so I just think that this team, they're going to run the ball a shit ton. They have a ton of talent running the ball, and then they're going to play action, and you're going to have to deal with covering Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo and McCaffrey out of the backfield. Like, how do you cover that team? So I just don't see, it's foolish to say something like, I don't see how they don't win because crazy things happen in the playoffs and only one team wins the Super Bowl. But I mean, I would be surprised if they didn't, at the very minimum, I expect them to make the conference finals. Like, I would be shocked if they didn't make the conference finals. And I think that they'll win the conference finals and make it to the Super Bowl. I could see them losing to the Chiefs, right? Because like Mahomes versus Brock Purdy, like, maybe, the Chiefs just outclass them. But overall, I'm right on board. Yeah, they're a wagon, and they're playing their best football. I believe they're relatively healthy on both sides of the ball, but I need to double check that. Um, so yeah, I like them. I think realistically, I see this Super Bowl as three teams from the AFC, which is Chiefs, Bills, Bengals in that order, my personal order, and two teams, I guess, from the NFC, which is the 49ers and the Eagles. And I just can't imagine any other team other than those five winning. So I'm sure the markets reflect that. But yeah, that was our preview. Just over 80 minutes on the pod. Good to be back after a probably too long hiatus. But we will be back to recap the first round next weekend or early next week after the games have ended, as well as we're going to bring on, I think we're going to bring on a guest, whether that's Brian or Jake or maybe even both, to talk a little bit of fantasy football recap too. So that'll be fun. Yes, sir. Let's go 49ers. You're never going to get that last part right. It's for other person. I'm me. Don't do me like this, Josh. What do you have going on in the background there? Hopefully it'll be fun. Well, you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I mean, they really were. I was so disappointed they didn't make the playoffs because I think they could have made noise in the playoffs, and I don't anticipate the Seahawks doing that. But this team is a lot of potential for years to come, so we'll see. On to the NFC South. This was the most mediocre division in the entire NFL. We had all.
I forget. You want me to upload the AUP3 or the Wave or both? I mean, I'm glad we didn't go past 80 minutes. I was like I was trying to speed it up. I was trying to speed it up when we were doing the season recap.